All right. Favorite Bible stories, go. What's your favorite Bible stories? Somebody. Esther? Okay. Nope. Okay. You? Moses? Me too. Cool. Anybody else? Lion's Den? Okay. My favorite one. Who knows about David and Goliath? Yes. Yeah, pretty common story. Nice. Okay, so we're going to do this in two parts because I think it's really important that I tell you the story first because it's kind of a long story, a little bit complicated. But I'm going to tell you the story first. We're going to read some scripture. I'm going to summarize a couple things because there's some big words in here that I don't want to mispronounce. So we're just going to roll with it. But we're going to read in the Bible first. Who's got their Bibles? Woo! 1, 2, nice. Do you have it on your phone? Nice. Pull it up on your phone. I want you to follow along with me. Go to 1 Samuel chapter 17. 1 Samuel chapter 17. All right, so we'll set this up with, there's two armies. There's the Philistine army and there is the Israeli army. And they are in a place called the Valley of Elah. Can we get that up here? Yeah. Okay, sweet. So this is where this is where David is going to come from, over here on this side. And the Philistines are over here on this side. And this is like dead center. That's what we'll call dead center, okay, for the sake of the story. So let's start to read. This is all in the Valley of Elah, okay? Now the Philistines gathered their armies for battle, and they were gathered in Segue, basically where I pointed over there. And at the same time, the Israel army was on the other side of the valley. Okay, verse 4. And there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Who knows how big that is? 6 cubits and a span. Okay, come here real quick. Hayden, hold this. Stand over there. Okay. All right. This, from here to there, is 6 cubits in a span. Imagine that standing straight up. 11 feet, 4 inches. That's how big Goliath was. Okay, you can let go. Thank you. So, Goliath, 11 feet, 4 inches, he walks down away from the camp. And he had on a helmet of bronze on his head. He had a coat of mail. Coat of mail is like chain mail. Have you ever seen like old movies where they got like the long silver dress, basically? That's what he had on. Okay. The weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels. I don't know how heavy that is, but it's pretty heavy. He had a bronze armor on his legs, javelin of bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron. And his shield bearer went before him. So basically, this dude is really, really big. Imagine Shane with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on his shoulders all the way down. That's how big this guy was. And he had a bunch of armor on. He walks out and he shouts to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not servants of Saul? Choose one man for yourselves and let him come down to me. And if he's able to fight and kill me, we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistine said, "I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all of Israel heard these words from this Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. So at this point, this is their first interaction with one another. Goliath comes out and he says this to them. Everybody gets freaked out. They don't know what to do, so they go back to their camp and they go to talk about it. So then this is where David comes into the picture. David is the youngest of 8 sons. His dad's name is Jesse, and he has 3 older brothers that are in Saul's army. So the 3 oldest sons of Jesse had followed Saul to battle, and the names of the 3 sons were Eliab, the firstborn, Abinadab, and the third was Shammah. David was the youngest. The 3 eldest followed Saul, but David went back and forth from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. So David would go hang out with Saul, but then be like, okay, I got to go back and take care of the sheep, because he was a shepherd, right? For 40 days and 40 nights, the Philistine came forward, took his stand morning and evening. So basically, for 40 straight days, Goliath would come out and say the same message. Send somebody out here to fight me. I'll fight them. If he wins, we'll be your servants. If I win, you guys are going to be our servants. So one day, Jesse, David's dad, told his son, take your brothers an ephah of this parched grain and these 10 loaves and carry them quickly to the camp of your brothers. And take these 10 cheeses to the commander of their 1,000. See if your brothers are well and bring some token from them. So basically he's asking David, I want you to go to their camp, check on your brothers, make sure they're okay, give them a little bit of food, and then bring something back with you so that I know that they are really okay. So he goes and does that. Let's look at verse 20 of chapter 17. David rose early in the morning and left the sheep with the keeper, took the provisions that his father gave them, and went to the camp. And Israel, the Philistines, drew up for battle, army against army. So whenever David shows up, Saul's army and the Philistines are facing each other, and they're looking at each other like, okay, we're about to fight. We're going to do this. And David left the things in charge of the keeper of the baggage. He ran to the ranks and went and greeted his brothers. He talked with them, behold, the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, came up out of the ranks of Philistine and spoke the same words as before, and David heard him. This was the first time that David had heard Goliath come out and say, somebody come fight me. All the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were much afraid. And the men of Israel said, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel, and the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches, will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. David said to the men who stood by him, what shall be done for the man who kills the Philistine and takes away from reproach of Israel? For who is this Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him in the same way. So shall it be done to the man who kills him. So basically David's like, so you're telling me if I go out there, or whoever goes out there and kills him, he's going to be rewarded with all that stuff you just said. And he said, yep, whoever goes out and kills him, they're going to get this reward. Now Eliab, his eldest brother, heard David speaking to the men. And Eliab got mad, and he said, why have you come down, and whom have you left those few sheep with in the wilderness? Basically just being like, what are you doing, dude? You're supposed to be taking care of the sheep. You brought us your food, or the food from dad. Here's your, just get out of here. And David said, what have I done now? What is not but a word? Basically, he's like, I haven't done anything. I'm just asking questions. Verse 31, when the words that David spoke were heard, they repeated them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, you are not able to go against this Philistine to fight him, for you are only a youth. And he has been a man of war from his youth. So basically, he's like, you're way too small. The dude's 11 feet, 4 inches tall. Look at you. You're a teenager. There's no way that you're going to be able to do this. David said to Saul, your servant used to be a sheep for his father. And when a lion came, or a bear, and took a lamb from the flock, I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, struck him down, and killed him. Your servant has struck down the lions and bears, and the Philistine shall be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God. And David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion, from the paw of the bear, will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said to David, go, and the Lord be with you. So after enough nagging to Saul, he's like, okay, go ahead, do it. We'll see what happens. So Saul was worried about David a little bit. He's like, okay, I'm going to put some armor on you because I don't want you to go out there just completely by yourself, which, I mean, he was going to be by himself, but he needed some help. So he was going to clothe him in some of his own personal armor so David could have at least a little bit of protection. I need one volunteer to come here, please. Okay, go ahead. All right. So walking up here, that was pretty easy, right? Okay, hold this. Now walk back that way. Yeah, Cody, come here. All right, now come back. Now, does that make it any harder to walk with just that? Not a lot? Okay. Now let's see if we can fold this up a little bit. Sling it over your shoulders. Go ahead and turn around like a scarf, like that. Okay. Now that's 10 pounds. That's all that is. This is probably like what, like 8 pounds, something like that? Okay, now walk that way. Okay, now come back. Any easier? Any harder? A little harder? Okay, so that's like 18 pounds worth of stuff on her right now. And she's like, it's a little bit harder. Armor weighs like 75 pounds once you've got it all on. So this is just like an illustration to show that, here, take both of those. Thanks. Careful, it's heavy. I don't know if you can handle it. So basically what I'm trying to say is it's like 75 pounds on a teenage kid who has never really worn armor before, and David's like, here, you need to wear this. This will protect you. David puts it on. He's like, I've never worn this. I haven't practiced in this. I'm not wearing this. So he takes it all back off. So then he's just plain clothes, just like this. And he goes to the creek that's by the camp, right there on the edge of the center, not completely in the center, but on the edge of the center. He goes out there and he finds 5 stones, 5 smooth stones, puts them in his pocket, comes back. People are looking at him like he's crazy. What are you going to do with 5 stones? Pulls out a slingshot. Who knows what a slingshot is? Not the one with the sticks and the rubber that goes back like that, right? That's not what I'm talking about. Who knows what else I'm talking about? Woolsey?
It's like a stick where you swing it around.
Not a stick, wrong. Okay, I made one of these and I forgot to bring it. But basically, imagine taking my shirt, okay? We cut it like this, and then there's a pouch in the middle, and then you cut another thing like that. So basically, you got about 10 inches on each side with about a 4-inch pouch in the middle. And you would take the stone, set it in the pouch, whip it around your head, okay? And then sling it. How easy would it be, say, to hit these doors with that? Not really that hard? If you were standing like right here? What if you were all the way back in the back of the room? Would that make it harder? Okay, so then what if I told you to hit this? I turn this around and say, okay, hit this. Not just the doors, you've got to hit the pulpit. Easy? Big talk, dog. Okay. Okay, so what if I said, my Bible, from all the way in the back of the room. I'm standing all the way here. Back of the room, you've got to hit my Bible. Still easy? Cat, bro. You can't do that. Okay, how about this? Tape measure.
I can hit that. Hard.
You said you couldn't hit the door, and now you're going to hit my tape measure? Crazy.
What about a crumb?
Huh?
Crumb. You can hit it.
A crumb? I mean, probably not. So Saul gave David armor, gave him a helmet, gave him a shield, gave him a sword, and David's like, nah, bro, I'm going to get my slingshot and a couple rocks. I'll go out there and take care of it. So the next part is, so David goes to the creek over here, gets his rocks, goes back to the camp, shows them what he's got. They laugh at him. Philistines are over here. They probably don't really know what's going on. They see a little kid walk out to the creek, don't think much of it. So then, guess who comes back out? Goliath. He comes back out. He starts making a spiel again like, oh, who's going to come at me? Who wants to fight me? It's been 40 days. Nobody's done anything about it. David walks out. Probably, I don't know. Yeah, probably a little bit bigger than you. Probably bigger than you. Probably Mabry's size, if I had to guess, but not pregnant. So David walks out, tiny little guy. Remember, Goliath, 11 feet tall, 11 feet 4 inches, right? Built like the rock. The rock on Shane's shoulders, built all the way down, not skinny like Shane. So he walks out. The Philistine looked and saw David, and he disdained, for he was but a youth, ruddy and handsome in appearance. Verse 43, and the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? And the Philistine cursed David by the gods. The Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds in the air and the beasts of the field. I also forgot, you know what shepherds carry with them, like whenever they're walking out in the field? A staff? Yeah, so David also had that, but I mean, yeah. And Goliath's got all of his armor on, big bronze helmet. He's got his shield bearer, which tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure a shield bearer is another person that holds his shield for him, and then if he decides he needs it, then the kid, so he wasn't carrying that, but still. Then he's got a javelin. Does anybody know how big a javelin is?
Pretty big.
It's pretty big, but imagine how big it was for Goliath.
Just like
An 11-foot dude, yeah, and it weighed, 600 shekels or whatever? So pretty big, right? So he's got all of this stuff. He walks out, sees David, he's like, what is this? I'll kill you, and the birds are going to eat you, right? Then David said to the Philistine, verse 45, then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with the sword and with your spear and with the javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down, cut off your head. I'll give your dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth, and the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that this assembly we may know that the Lord saves you, not with the sword and the spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand. It's not going to happen? Okay, so basically, he just got told by a giant that he was going to get killed and he was going to let the birds eat him. Then a kid Mabry's size looks at that guy dead in the eyes and said, you know what? I'm going to kill you. I'm going to cut your head off. Then I'm going to let you get eaten by the birds and by the beasts of the earth. Got guts, right? So, verse 48, when the Philistine arose and came out, drew near to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. David put his hand in his bag, took out one stone, and slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. Take a second, everybody, touch your forehead right here. Now poke it. It's pretty hard, right? I didn't ask about the size of your head, but I guess he's got a big head. So it's pretty hard, right? And I was asking you, would you be able to hit this door, the pulpit, my Bible, my tape measure? Would you be able to do it? No. I'll tell you right now, you're not going to be able to do it, okay? But David starts slinging a slingshot around. The stone sank into Goliath's forehead, and he fell to his face on the ground. So he threw it that hard, that accurately, it went through his forehead. And have you ever seen somebody get hit in the head with a baseball and they get a big goose egg and it just pumps right out? He threw it so fast, so hard, it went through his forehead. Okay, that just sounds crazy to me. I don't know how you guys aren't more amazed by it. Yeah, thank you for the reactions. Appreciate that. So the stone sunk into his forehead. He fell on his face to the ground. So David prevailed over the Philistine with the sling and with the stone and struck the Philistine that killed him. There was no sword in the hand of David. Then David ran over to the Philistine and took Goliath's sword out of his sheath, drew it over his head, killed him, and then cut off his head. Did exactly what he said he was going to do with it. The men of Israel and Judah rose and shout and pursued the Philistines as far as Gath. So after all this happens, David walks out to here, kills Goliath, and remember, the people of Israel, whenever Goliath would come out and make his remarks, they were freaked out and they ran back up to their camp. These people, once David killed Goliath, they got freaked out because a little kid came out with a slingshot, threw it so hard it went to a dude's forehead, went down on the ground, walked over, picked up this giant's sword, cut off his head, and then looked at him like, what's up? They started running down this way, right? They're running away. As far as Gath, I don't really know how far away Gath was. I probably should have looked at that before telling the story. My bad. Look it up later. The men of Israel, they started to run away. The people of Israel came back from chasing the Philistines, and they plundered their camp. Then David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put Goliath's armor in his tent. As soon as Saul saw David go out against the Philistine, he said to Abner, the commander of the army, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, as your soul lives, O king, I do not know. The king said, find out who it is. Turns out he finds out it's Jesse's son, whatever. Okay, end of the story. That's basically the end of it. But now we're going to look at how that can impact your life. So number one, be bigger than your fears. Twice a day, for 40 days, Goliath would challenge the Israelites, demanding a one-on-one battle. The Israelites were terrified and did not want to fight him. None of them would dare to challenge Goliath. David basically showed up and said, why is nobody doing anything about this? When David confronted Goliath, who had armor and javelin, all David has was a staff, sling, and 5 stones, not to mention that he was baby in size compared to Goliath. But did that stop him? No. Not long after the battle started, he pulled his sling back with the stone and attached it to it and then let it rip right in Goliath's forehead. If there were all kinds of grown men there who were hearing this message for 40 straight days and couldn't do anything about it, what was different about David? Why did David have the courage to go up and do that to him? It's because of God. God gave him the power and the authority and the confidence to want to go and do that, to be confident in his skills and confident in what would happen. Number 2, thank you, Shane. It's not about the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. In life, you're bound to come across really big challenges. Some might be small, some might be medium, but you're going to face challenges. The size of the challenge, problem, or the obstacle is irrelevant. Why? Because that doesn't determine what's possible for you. What determines what's possible for you is the trust and the faith that you have in your God. There's nothing that you can't do if you have God on your side, right? You're probably going to hear that all the time as you grow up. You've probably heard that hundreds of times throughout your life already. Well, if you've got God on your side, nothing's impossible. And you might take it and let it go over your head and act like it doesn't really mean anything, but it really does mean something. There's been plenty of things that have happened to me personally, the people that I know personally, that I don't know how they could get through that without having God on their side, right? The only thing, I already said that. It's about your heart, courage, and commitment. That's what matters. You can apply the same principle and same level of thinking to take your life and the challenges that you're facing. Think bigger than the challenge, be bigger than the obstacle, and act as if it's impossible for you to not fail. Have self-confidence, conviction, and believe in yourself more than you believe the challenge is too big to handle. Number 3, make use of what you already have. Have any of you ever had like a project for school and you're like, well, I don't have a computer at home, so it's going to be really hard for me to be able to take care of this, which it's 2022. Who am I kidding? You've all got computers at home. But you try to make excuses for yourself about why you cannot accomplish something. Something's going to hold you back every time, right? Many people complain about what they don't have, why not having what they don't have is a problem, why they need that thing before they can get started, why not having that thing is holding them back. But the truth is, you have to make use of what you already have to get what you want. Compared to what Goliath had, David had nothing. David had a piece of cloth. He didn't even have stones on him. He had to walk down to the creek in between all of them to pull out stones. No armor, nothing. And a staff, but he didn't do anything with it. But that did not stop him from going out and facing the biggest dude on the battlefield. He made use of what he had, and it happened to be more than enough to get the job done. He defeated Goliath regardless of the comparison, weight, strength, armor, weapons, whatever it was. David didn't cry and complain because of the differences between him and Goliath. He basically said, so what? Why aren't any of you doing anything about this? And left everyone in shock after defeating Goliath so effortlessly with nothing but a sling and a stone. So this, I think, pertains a little bit to how you can be an example in your schools, how you can be an example with your friends. Whenever I was in 7th grade, I think, I was going to a church down in Festus, and for a whole summer we went through this program called Way of the Master. And this guy named Ray Comfort had a real nice voice. I think he's British, actually, but he had a real nice voice, and he would talk you through, these are the 10 steps that you need to follow to be able to share the gospel with somebody. These are the 10 steps that you can actively and, confidently share the gospel with people. So for a whole summer, we spend time going through these steps, and I finally felt like I got it. So this next school year comes around. We go get all of our new classes, we start to get settled in, and I made a new friend. His name was Will, but he was not a believer. And I found that out quickly because he kind of asked me, what'd you do this summer? And I told him about the church camps I went to and the mission trip that we did there in town, that my parents went to Africa that summer to go on a mission trip. He's like, why do you guys spend your time doing that stuff? Why do you waste your time doing that? And I finally thought that I had the opportunity to share what I had just learned with him, share the gospel in those 10 steps that were laid out. And the first time you try to do it, I guarantee the words that you want to say are not going to come out the way that you practiced. The first time I taught a lesson in here, I sat back there and sweat for about 20 minutes, came up here to start to talk, and like nothing that I had planned happened the way that I had planned it. And I was really like beating myself up about it. But I mean, you've got to just try it and do it. So I tried it and I did it and I messed it up. But he still heard the gospel. And somebody else that was at church with me that whole summer, a girl that was at church with me, was sitting at the same table as I was I was sharing the gospel with him whenever we got done. And we were going to our next classes. She literally grabbed me by my backpack, pulled me to the side, and was like, you messed it up. You messed it up. I was like, yeah, I know. I got really nervous. I didn't know really what to say. And she was wrong for saying this, but she was like, you probably just lost any hope of him knowing about Jesus. And that has, still, I don't know how many years it was, probably like 15 years ago. To this day, it sticks with you. When I go to start to share the gospel with somebody, I still kind of think about those steps, but I'm not going to try to follow them exactly because I'm never going to get it right. But every time I share the gospel, that pops into my head. You're going to mess it up. You're not going to say it the way that you're supposed to say it. You're not going to follow all 10 steps. But it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if I have every tool equipped to make it happen or if I don't. As long as I'm able to share the love of Jesus, share the gospel, tell someone there's a man who came to this world to die for your sins and for mine. Then he did die. He was hung on a cross. He was beaten. He was battered. He was bruised. He was cut up. He got stabbed in the side. He had nails driven through his wrists. And he was put in a tomb. But 3 days later, he came back to life. And then you start to talk about what a relationship with Jesus looks like, what happens at church. And a lot of times whenever you share the gospel, 9 times out of 10, people are going to start to ask you questions. You may not have all the answers, and that's okay too. Because there are other people in this world, in this community, people in this room, people who teach you every week, who can give you those answers, and it's perfectly fine to look that person in the face and be like, I don't know, but I'll find out and I'll come back and tell you. It doesn't matter though. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the top of the line gospel way or gospel message of how to teach or tell somebody about Jesus, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You just need to tell them basically how Jesus has changed your life. Do you know how Jesus has changed your life? Do you have in your mind things that have changed for you? Did you used to be angry all the time, and now you have a joy in your heart that you can't explain other than to say, Jesus gave it to me? Those are the things that matter. The things that show change in you and your heart and the story that you can tell about what Jesus has done for you. Number 4, believe it's possible. The Israelites did not believe that it was possible to defeat Goliath, which is why they feared him. If you were to rate your self-belief on a scale of 1 to 10, their self-belief would probably be less than a 5, probably like a 2 or a 1, because they literally turned around and ran away every time. On the other hand, David's belief probably was at an 8 or a 9. That's why it wasn't an issue for him to go and challenge Goliath head on and take him down. Without a strong belief in what you're pursuing is possible, you fail. You'll quit on yourself before you even get halfway. Think about me whenever I went to go and share the gospel after the first time. I had so much doubt in myself that probably 10 times after that, I talked myself out of going and doing it because I didn't want to make a fool of myself. I didn't want that girl to come up to me in the hallway and grab me and be like, you messed it up, because I thought it had to be a certain way. Self-belief if your self-belief isn't strong enough, you'll quit on yourself and you won't make the move. If your fears are stronger than yourself, belief, and your faith, you've already shot yourself in the foot without knowing it. Until you believe in yourself more than your fear or the obstacle, you'll continue to quit on yourself. The last one, number 5, do not underestimate your capabilities. It's always dangerous to underestimate yourself. Whenever you do that, you end up achieving less. Judging how Goliath looked, David, would you think that you could beat him? Do I need to show you what 11 foot 4 inches looks like again? Standing up, built like the Rock, not like Shane, big. There is no way humanly possible if you walked out and just looked at a guy like that you'd be like, yeah, I could take him one-on-one. No. The outcome of the battle turned out to be a lot different than the Israelites expected. David did not underestimate his abilities or himself. He had self-confidence and lots of it. And he was smart enough to know that he was capable of being successful. Where is it? Whenever David walked out and started talking to Goliath, and Goliath was like, you come at me with these sticks and you think that you're going to beat me. David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword and with a spear, with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of the hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down, cut off your head, and give your dead body to the Philistine, or to the birds of the air and the wild beasts of the earth. He knew where his strength came from. He knew it wasn't going to be just off of his skill, that he could throw a slingshot dead in his eyes. He knew that that wasn't going to be enough. He had to have God on his side to be able to defeat him. Stop underestimating yourself. It doesn't matter if you're a writer, if you're an athlete, if you play the piano, if you like working construction stuff, if you like driving tractors, if you want to be a race car driver, I don't know what you guys want to do. It doesn't matter. You're capable of more than you believe. You've just got to see it because you haven't given yourself a chance to. If anything should be overestimating because you'll end up giving and doing more than it is expected, and you'll end up achieving more and reaching your potential in the process. And I'll leave you with one verse. It's really corny. I found out about it because of a guy named Tim Tebow. He wore it on his eye black. Do you guys know who Tim Tebow is? Wore it on his eye black under his eyes basically every game. Philippians 4:13. Through Christ, I've got to read it now because I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you. Thank you for this time to dig into your word. Thank you for David. Thank you for the story of David and the confidence that it can bring to us as believers in you. I pray that you would use this story to give these kids confidence in their everyday lives, to give them confidence in their faith, to give them constant confidence in the things that they do throughout their lives, and that you would allow them to overcome any fear that they have. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.